I would like to entitle this lecture this evening from the Parshah Toldot, called "The Older Shall Serve the Younger." The older shall serve the younger, and we want to get into the meaning behind that. In the story of Toldot, or this Parsha found in the 25th chapter of Genesis, Bereshit, starting with verse 19, it says, "Here are the generations of Isaac, the son of Abraham. Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah and daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean of Padam Aram, and sister of Laban, the Aramean, to be his wife. Isaac prayed before the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren." We're starting another patriarch in which the wife of that patriarch is barren. "And the Lord accepted his prayer, and his wife Rebekah conceived, but the children pushed within her, and she said, 'If so, why do I exist?' When she went to seek instruction from before the Lord answered her and said," this is the key question, the key language here, "Two nations are in your womb, two kingdoms will issue from your body. One kingdom will be stronger than the other kingdom, and the older will serve the younger. When her days were given to give birth were at hand, there were twins in her womb. The first one immersed red, like a hairy mantle all over him, and they named him Esau. Then his brother came out holding his heel, of Esau, so he was named Yakov, which that means the grabber of the heel, right? And Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them." The language of this text is can be grammatically or in Hebrew a bit obscure, and in the cursory reading in English, you just automatically make an assumption that when it says that the older shall serve the younger, you just take for granted he must be talking about Esau serving Yakov, which there is some truth to that. But according to Yonan Bar Moaz, a professor of Talmudic studies in Israel and Jerusalem, he points out the idea that the language itself really depicts something that is not as straightforward as that. And as I begin to read his white paper on this subject matter, and then go through and search what the sages of blessed memory have to say, I realize there is a reason why it's a bit obscure, because it's teaching us a greater value of what does it mean the older shall serve the younger. And we're going to take it down to a sod level in which we understand that within each one of us we have two things that battle against each other. Just like Yakov and Esau, we have a yetzer hara, which is the evil inclination, and the yetzer tov, which is the good inclination. That means we constantly are battling between these two character elements within our life. And at some level, well, not at some level, at the ultimate level in creation, whenever we were born, God gave us these two things for a purpose. There is a purpose for them. The sages of blessed memory say that Isaac was seeing that the idea of two boys being born, Yakov and Esau, that together, both of them making up the balance of what the patriarchs would have been, and the world could have brought about the knowledge of God in the world. But the problem is Esau, on the other side, in his world, he wanted to do what he wanted to do. This wasn't about a grander purpose. This was about what he wanted to do. And as we all know, in the context later on, when he comes in from the field and hunting, he says to his brother, "Give me some of that red stuff." And he was willing to give his birthright. And later on, we see that he's very upset at his father because his father gave the birthright to his brother Yakov. I'm thinking, why are you so upset? You just gave it away, right? Why did he give it away? Because he is the epitome of the yetzer hara. You do what you want, when you need it. And you don't consider the consequences. At the same time, The only thing that Esau was interested in was the material benefits of the birthright. He wasn't interested in the covenant. And, it's interesting because in meeting some of the, in my first initial journey out of Christianity, I came into contact with rabbis of more liberal persuasion, you understand, who would tell me to stay in Christianity and keep doing what you're doing, and there's no need to convert. You shouldn't convert. You should just continue doing what you're doing because you're a good guy. My problem is this person telling me this didn't believe the Torah was from God and didn't practice Judaism himself. And I'm thinking of Esau. I'm thinking, this is the epitome of Esau. I don't want you to have the covenant, but I don't want it either. Does it make sense? We're living in a world in which that is Esau. That is what Israel is facing this day. I mean, to this very day, Esau is sort of manifested in the European countries. They are the European countries in the sense that we don't want what you have, but we don't want you to have what you have. You understand? And it's this constant battle that's going on back and forth. So let's deal with this concept of older shall serve the younger, and then we're going to bring down at the end of this shiur, what this actually means for us on a personal basis. Parshah Toldot depicts the efforts of Isaac and Rebekah, each to grant the blessing of their favorite son. Isaac favored Esau, and Rebekah chose Yakov without explaining to us why they held the opposing view as to which son should receive the blessing. The text doesn't really give us any detail of why. What was the specific matter? Of course, as the sages of blessed memory do a great job in bringing down all of the different potential reasons why. There's one that says that as Esau and Yakov grew older, very clearly, Mom saw that Esau was not going to honor the covenant and that he would destroy, that if it got into his hands, he would destroy it. 2 chapters earlier, we're told that Isaac favored Esau because he had a taste for game. Genesis 25, verse 28. But there is no indication as why Rebekah favored Isaac, as so the riddle remains. So far, as this reason goes on, if we look closely at Isaac's behavior, we see that there's a total lacking of his ability to discern between the taste of game and goat, or even of lentils. He's not really sure what he can tell the difference between a wild game or a goat that's raised. Even when he realized that he had been deceived and that had not been Esau who brought him food, he asked, who was then that hunted game? They brought him a goat, you remember that. And he thought it was wild game. Moreover, he says, I ate of it before you came. I blessed him, Genesis 27:33. When we know full well what Jacob brought, not venison, but food which Rebekah had prepared, further, the fact that the Torah needs to explain why Isaac favored Esau raises doubt as to whether this reason really provides sufficient grounds for granting him a blessing, itself a most unusual and unprecedented event. The idea that Isaac is laying there in bed, not being able to discern even between what is wild game and what is farm raised, is possible. Is it possible that he could not know who was the eldest son? Now, one would debate in the text whether Jacob lied to his father, and in reality, he pulled one of those technical. He didn't really technically lie. When his father asked him, "Is that you, Esau?" He says, "I'm." As he says, I'm here. Let's look at the text real quick before we go on. Let's go to help me find the verse real quick.
24.
Is it 24? 27, 24. Let's go. 27. Somebody read out of the Chumash for me, please. Let's see. Let's go on. I want to go where he's with his father. Esau, firstborn son. 27:18? No. Oh, here we go.
Who are you, my son? And he said, it is I, Esau, your firstborn.
Okay, read that for me. What chapter and verse?
27 starts in 18. And he came to his father and said, Father. And he said, Here I am. Who are you, my son? Jacob said to his father, It is I, Esau, your firstborn.
Okay, so here we go. He goes, read it again slowly. I want you to listen to this technical, not a lie, but what do you call it? Redirected the idea. Here we go. Read it again.
And he said, Here am I. Who are you, my son? Jacob said to his father, It is I.
It is I. So he's first saying, he says, Who are you? He says, It is I, meaning I'm Jacob. Then he says, Esau's your firstborn.
Well, this just says Esau, your firstborn.
Esau, your firstborn, right. Right, there's a pause.
Period.
Right. Esau, your firstborn. Like Esau's your firstborn type deal.
And 24.
24, chapter 24.
Isaac says, he said, Is it indeed you,
Mm-hmm.
my son Esau? And he said, I am.
I am. Is it you? I am. So imagine he's blind. He doesn't know. So is it you? I am. I don't know how we'd answer. Go ahead.
But how do we deal with this where he says, It is I, Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me.
Right.
Well, Isaac didn't tell Jacob.
To get him some food. That's interesting. That's interesting. That's interesting. Well, one of the things that we can reconcile, it is permitted to tell a lie in certain occasions. You know that.
He was obeying his mother.
Well, not just for that reason. He is obeying his mother. But it's all right to tell a lie to protect life, and in this situation is to protect the Torah, to protect the covenant. It's all right to do it. For example, if you were at my house and someone was trying to kill you, you would hope that I would lie my britches off to save your life, wouldn't you? So that's the idea. He's not. I have no idea where he's at. I would lie to save somebody's life, and I would hope you'd do the same, just in case I come running to your house late one night. Richard, do you have something you have to say?
Yeah, it says, I have some commentary here. It's from the...
Speak really loud so that people can hear.
It says, furthermore, since Esau had sold Jacob the birthright, it was proper for Jacob to say, It is I, Esau, your firstborn.
Ah, interesting. That's very good. And where does that come from again? Okay, that's from back here. Okay, good. Let's look at some other things. In addition, the spot where we're told about the different parental preferences seems inappropriate. The statement about who loved whom in 25:28. So let's go to 25:28.
Can you read this real quick?
Yes.
Right there, the commentary, and then off on verse 19, where it says, It is I, Esau, your firstborn. Rashi explains, It is I who bring this to you. Esau, however, is your firstborn. It got however in parentheses.
Okay, so he's still getting around. He's not technically lying to him. But at the same time, it's sort of...
Who was come out first?
Who came out first? Esau. Esau came out first, and Yakov was holding his heel.
So if he come out the second, if he's holding him, what does it mean? He was going to be over.
Well, the whole idea is that Jacob was trying to grab a hold of the covenant. You understand? He wanted to grab a hold of the very thing that he knew that he was going to be the firstborn. Yaakov should have been the firstborn.
What I'm trying to say,
Right.
He didn't lie, basically.
Well, yeah. I guess you could say that. Yeah. So, 28 says, chapter 25, verse 28, Isaac loved Esau, for he was accustomed to eat of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Now, in reference to this, this whole story is placed as a preface to the story of selling the birthright. There, however, Esau and Yakov and the parents have no part in the story. On the other hand, the absence of such an explanation in the story of the blessing precludes it from being part of the story's exposition, as if the Torah was asking us to ignore 25:28. When we try to understand what Rebekah and Isaac felt and did, Little wonder that so many commentators have wrestled with the understanding of Isaac and Rebekah's motives. I don't know about you, but every year that I've read this, I always come to this place. Why? How is it the two of them were not in sync with each other? Well, did not Rebekah go and pray to Hashem, and Hashem tell her that in her were two nations, right? That they would be fighting with each other. Why didn't she go to her husband and say something is up, something is wrong? The idea is that we don't know if she ever communicated this to her husband. Why did she not communicate them? Yes.
The Humash says, since God did not reveal this prophecy to Isaac, Rebekah felt she did not have the right to do so, even years later when she conspired to win Isaac's blessings for Jacob over Esau.
Right. So the reason why, according to sages of blessed memory, it said that she didn't want to influence the family dynamics. We've heard of the fair-headed child in the family, the favorite child. Didn't want to cause that problem in the family, and therefore it didn't happen. Maimonides suggests a comprehensive interpretation of the text which accounts for Rebekah's feelings toward Yakov. The differences of opinion between her and Isaac and the sort of strange or weird tactics that she went about to employ to win Yakov's blessing, apparently Rebekah never told Isaac, as we just heard, about God's prophecy to her, and that the older shall serve the younger, found in Genesis 25:23. For now we could, for how could Isaac go against the word of God? Why didn't she tell him? At first she did not tell him because her sense of morality and modesty, for she went to acquire the Lord, and she had gone without Isaac's permission, and perhaps she thought it just was not appropriate to tell my husband this because it would have seemed that I've averted and went around him. I didn't address these issues with him. And it also may come down to this idea that she thought I need not to report prophecy to a prophet himself. How sort of brash and immodest would that be? From the onset, we can see that Maimonides associated the rights to the blessing, which is the special privileges of the firstborn. Now, what do we mean between the rights and the blessings? There are many different levels to this covenant. Number one was the covenant responsibility that Abraham would have had to God. That is passed from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob, or to Esau, supposedly. And this responsibility was not only inheriting the vast wealth and property, and to make sure that it was distributed and that they took care of the family, but it was also about inheriting the great da'at, the great wisdom from Torah that was supposed to be passed down. That's number two. And number three was to guard the very central covenant of obligation that I will teach my children to follow the Torah just like my fathers Abraham and Isaac would have done. With this in mind, the Ramban comments and says, Jacob said, "The other is the firstborn. Place your right hand on his head," Genesis 48:18, to give him a precedence in the blessing, in order that Isaac desired to bless Esau not be interpreted as a motive solely by his love for him. Maimonides could not ascribe the difference of opinion between Isaac and Rebekah to their personal inclinations. Rather, he ascribed it to the prophecy given to Rebekah that the two sons will be born. Isaac was acting out of ignorance because he did not know or have the knowledge of prophecy in which God promised supremacy of Yakov, the younger Esau, the firstborn. So this idea is, there's another idea that is prescribed by Maimonides that says that this was really about a future prophecy, that one day the older will serve the younger, meaning that at the end of times when Mashiach comes, that Yakov will rise to the heel of Esau and take the heel. You don't remember the prophecy that is associated with that. And it could be. But I believe there's a little bit deeper meaning behind this that I'm really curious to explore. According to Radak, the prophecy cannot be understood unequivocally. The absence of the proper language that would say, who is the younger, who is the older, what does the word actually mean in Hebrew? The word is rav, meaning older. or it's really not even used in the term of age. It's actually used throughout the Tanakh as a number, right? As like one who is greater. For example, the nation is hara. It's the largest number, a large number. It usually doesn't talk about or using the idea that one is born first as Rav. That's sort of a word that's sort of added to give you some understanding that's a little bit deeper. Miss Betty, you have something you want to say?
I was just thinking when you said that, the number in Rob, I read too, that's what God changed Abram's name to
Avraham.
because he would be
Multitude of numbers, right. So the idea is it's not about older or younger, but it's about numerical value. Does that make sense? Or vastness, meaning that one who will be of great vastness. Well, this creates a problem, because if that's the case, then you have to ask, well, which one was greater in number, the Jewish people or the descendants of Esau? Well, clearly you would have to say the descendants of Esau were of greater number. So does that mean now that the ones who greater number will one day serve Judah or the descendants of Yakov? I mean, it's a pretty perplexing idea. But let me bring down to you, I want to make sure that I've covered all of my points from the sages. Yeah, I think I can go ahead and start dealing with this subject. When we opened up this lecture, we talked about the yetzer hara and yetzer tov, the good inclination and the evil inclination. That each one of us have sort of these dual things or dual actions happening within inside of us. It is the very thing that influences us to do, to eat, to procreate, to have relationship. That's the yetzer hara that causes us to be passionate about taking care of ourselves. But we know the yetzer hara unchecked is something that can induce us to do sin, correct? And we have the yetzer tov, which is the element within us that constantly encourages us to connect to Hashem, to do righteous acts, to treat people with kindness, loving kindness, and do charity. If those two elements line up to be like the Esau, being the yetzer hara, the negative or evil inclination, and the yetzer tov, Yakov, then inside of us, we have to have an understanding of what Hashem is trying to tell us. That ultimately, this role play that we see happening in this text, in which a lecture that we posted up from last year, we talked about the two nations, the struggle of two nations. And reality is the struggle of every man, the struggle of every woman, and that each one of us have these dueling natures that are constantly battling. But the secret to this is a prophetic message that is given to Rebekah that resounds powerfully in this generation, and that is, the older shall serve the younger, meaning your yetzer hara shall serve your yetzer tov. Your evil inclination should be in subservient manner to your good inclination, meaning that you have to be in control of your yetzer hara. And in the end of days, before Mashiach comes, and we all know this story is actually the story of redemption. The Rebbe said that we are no longer, and this was when he was alive just 30 years ago, so we're no longer in the heels of Mashiach or in the footsteps of Mashiach. We're actually in redemption. It's already begun. And so if we're in redemption, then what is the prophetic nature of this text, and what do we learn today in this text? Is that we have to have a sort of full court press to finally bring our older, more numerous, more powerful self, that is our yetzer hara, our negative inclination, our evil inclination, and bring it under the service of the younger, which would be the sometimes less powerful. Does that make sense? Because what is the most powerful most of the time? Your evil inclination, right? Because it deals with your base nature. And how do we know that? try going without eating. You know, in our high holy days when we fast, any other time you could go all day without eating, right? You wake up one morning, you realize it's time to start the fast, or that evening. You wake up the next morning, and you're ravaged. You feel like that you're going to pass out, right? Your ears are ringing, your eyes are red, you have a hangover, you don't know what's going on. That is your yetzer hara. That is your negative inclination. And it is the yetzer tov that struggles like, oh, if I can only make it through the day, I'll be hitting some level of righteousness. Well, this idea that we can submit ourselves, our negative inclination, to the good inclination, reckons back to the first part of Genesis. And you guys will remember this. When God is speaking to Cain, and what does God tell Cain? Sin is at the door, crouching at the door. And he says, you have the power to overcome it. It's a powerful message to us in a day in which we seem to be overwhelmed with uncontrollable desires, addictions to every sort of things, not just drugs and alcohol, but people who eat foam couches and all kinds of crazy things, matches. I've seen everything that you can imagine in a world in which we feel like I just cannot help myself. The Creator says, no, you can help yourself. You can be a part of redeeming not only yourself. How can the world be redeemed if I don't first start redeeming myself? And I redeem myself by bringing myself into subjection. It is when the yetzer hara and the yetzer tov work together as a team. You would go, whoa, hold on a second. What do you mean work as a team? They're actually supposed to work as a team. You see, the yetzer hara, at many levels, my negative inclination, I hate saying evil inclination, because people think it's like Hasatan as the devil, right? It's not that. It's your negative inclination. It means that, for example, here's the perfect example. A person that is constantly desiring relationships, and many illicit relationships, and maybe cheating on their spouse, and they're going from one relationship to another. In reality, that yetzer hara is trying to drive that individual to fall in love with the Creator, to find an intimate relationship with the Creator. That's what it's there for. But the problem is that yetzer hara doesn't know that. The yetzer tov, the good inclination, is the one that has to say, okay, hello, if you want a legitimate relationship, it's not found in human relationship, it's found with the relationship with the Creator. And so that's just a small example. The yetzer hara is a fantastic element that helps give us a drive. For example, do you know that your yetzer hara, teamed with your yetzer tov, can help you to become a great chacham in Torah, expert in Torah? Why? Well, you go, how is that? Well, it's your negative inclination that constantly drives you to want to excel and be good and to be better. And I want to be better than the rest. And I want to achieve greater things. And it's the yetzer tov that needs to say, if you want to achieve greater things, let's achieve it in something that's good. So what do? We want to see Isaac's sort of dream according to the sages of blessed memory, who said that if Esau and Yakov could team up, they could change the world. And if we can team up with our negative inclination, our positive, get them two teamed up, and remember, the larger, the older, the more negative inclination needs to submit itself to the yetzer tov. Once you do that, you can change your life. It'll completely be changed. It's an amazing transformation. That concludes today's shiur, this lecture, and we'll open it up for questions, comments, or whatever.